So, I binge-watched JoJo Part 6, and if you read the title, you'll know I thought it was straight fire. This anime hooked me in immediately with an original story that had all of the classic JoJo charm. To start, I'm going to give a spoiler-free review, then I'm going to get into the details of the first 12 episodes of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6, Stone Ocean. I'm Wheeze, sorry for delaying Demon Slayer Explained badly, but relevant topics that I care about only come up so often. Please like and subscribe, I want to grow so badly. But with that amazingly professional intro out of the way, let me gush about JoJo Part 6. First, if you haven't seen any JoJo, I recommend starting from part 1 and just enjoy the ride, but it isn't necessary to know all of the history of JoJo to appreciate this story. That said, part 3, Stardust Crusaders, heavily ties into this part and sets up the antagonist's motivation. Part 3 is heavily tied into part 2, Battle Tendency, because of one of the main characters, and part 2 is the second half of season 1, which contains part 1. So you might as well watch all of JoJo. Okay, done? Cool. Now that you are extremely invested in the JoJo franchise, let me tell you why you should watch Part 6, because you definitely need me to do that for you. Stone Ocean feels like a fresh take on JoJo's story, which is strange because it really follows the same formula as most JoJo parts. The main character, JoJo, gets thrown into a situation and then decides to defeat the main bad guy because at their heart, JoJos are 80s movie action stars. But Stone Ocean gives Jolyne one of the stronger motivations for this choice to become the hero. However, instead of an ancient threat, mafia, or town full of just freaking insane people, Jolyne is framed for murder and sent to prison, so she wants to escape. However, pretty early on, there are some twists and turns that really take the show in a new direction. I'll talk more about that in the spoiler section of this video. As for the characters, so far Part 6 has some of the best characters of the series, in my opinion. And Jolyne is one of my favorite JoJos. She is the first female JoJo, and she is fantastic. She feels so real, which isn't common for characters in this bizarre world. She is tough like her father Jotaro, but she is also very vulnerable. She is kind to people, but also has a temper and can try to force her way on others. Her interactions with everyone is great, and especially the dynamic with Jotaro, who she feels abandoned her. Similar to Part 5, Golden Wind, Stone Ocean has a great supporting cast. Ermes, Emporio, and even Foo Fighters. Weather Report is a beautiful man who became so likable in such a short time, but the one who stood out the most was Ermes. Her character was fantastic, and she even got an episode solely devoted to her, and it was a great episode and well deserved. As always, there's the classic JoJo comedy. The show is hilarious. I'll get a little more into the comedy in the spoiler section. The fights are great as always, the tension is extra high being in a prison where she can get punished for any infraction, and the moment where the music starts as the bad guy thinks he has her defeated is awesome, as she JoJos her way out of the fight with some ridiculous setup to defeat the enemy. Even though they're about the same throughout all of JoJo, the fights in this part felt particularly well executed. Stone Ocean has a setting close to Part 4. Instead of a town, everything is happening in a prison, and it's a really great setting, where bribery is rampant, and you can see the hierarchy of who has the most money and who is the strongest. We get to see Jolyne fit into the system and rise through it, where her victories and obtaining money actually feel like it matters, and it is used later in the show for very important events. With a relatively low amount of currency changing hands, the money feels like it has real value. It's easier to wrap your mind around, I need $50 for a phone call, than I'm gonna steal $100 million from a corporation or whatever. The animation style feels like a mix between Part 4 Diamond is Unbreakable and Part 5 Golden Wind, and David production is fantastic as always. There is some scenes with background characters just being silhouettes that was a little distracting at times, but it wasn't super noticeable and never took away from the important moments or action or the otherwise beautifully animated world. Overall, I am very impressed with Stone Ocean, and I'm curious as to how the second half of the show will be. Please don't spoil in the comments if you have read the manga. Right now, I think this is my second favorite JoJo part, with only Part 2 ahead of it. However, recency bias is a real thing, and I've only seen this first part of it. The ending could ruin it, but so far it's great, and the ending of JoJo parts are usually the best part. Needless to say, I have high hopes. So far, there's no confirmed date for the rest of the season. Alright, on to the spoiler talk. I'm going to assume you have seen it, so I'll just be skimming through some of my favorite moments. First, Jotaro freaking died. There, just in case you weren't able to get away from the spoiler part quick enough. But Jotaro does actually die, kinda. The beginning of this anime is kinda hectic. There's Jolyne awakening her stand, not knowing what's going on as we follow her. There's a kid who keeps appearing and disappearing, and then it leads to the trippy dream sequences with JoJo that feel painfully like real dreams, where nothing makes sense but random things keep happening. After all that chaos, they finally get to the fight with the antagonist, Jolyne and Whitesnake, and they outwit JoJo and use Jolyne as bait to kill JoJo, and I was in disbelief. At first I was half wondering if he just straight up died. That moment felt tense. It reminded me of Joseph reacting to Caesar's death in part 2. There were multiple beautiful shots in this moment of Jolyne's mourning, and then she chooses to stay and find the discs to save him. This was a legitimately powerful scene. The dynamic between Jolyne and her father was really great. She has the feeling of being abandoned and even calls him out on keeping her safe, but not caring about other aspects of her life. JoJo showed his true love by sacrificing himself, and Jolyne showed her love by staying in the prison and hunting down whoever had the discs. Really great stuff, and really great setup to a good motivation for Jolyne to take down the bad guy. Alright, next I wanted to talk about the comedy. JoJo comedy is so great. The entire show is usually so outlandish that the ridiculous comedy just fits super well within it. In episode 6, we get one of the funniest episodes. Ermes gets her stand, which has a super freaking cool ability. This part has some really unique stands. Anyway, she steals the memory disc out of a guy who stole her money and then questions him about it, not realizing she stole his memories, so he breaks down and starts to cry. Ermes talks to him a little bit and he falls in love with her, and then is like, "No girl would ever want me, I'ma go hang myself." And then he hangs himself right there in the bathroom. I probably shouldn't find this so funny, but the timing on him freaking out, her freaking out about how weird this guy is, and then he just like kills himself. So she saves him because his stand causes her to suffer whatever he is going through, and he calmly thanks her and says he is thinking clearly and won't do it again. Then he instantly tries to drown himself. The best part of all this going on is that the suicidal tendencies have nothing to do with the stand or any supernatural ability. And his backstory for getting thrown in jail was that he was so unlucky. He was cleaning his shotgun and it went off in his apartment right as a woman jumped off the building. So it killed her before she hit the ground, and he was charged with murder because no one believed his story and thought he had shot her off the roof. That was a great episode, but there was a lot of great comedy throughout. JoJo punching Jolyne during his dream thing and then being like, "Yep, now I'm convinced this isn't a dream." Or Poochie complaining that frog guts were splattering on his $800 pants while he is in a literal life and death situation. Finally, I want to talk about the ending and the main antagonist. The twist of Whitesnake being the main antagonist was epic. Him killing Jolyne was actually shocking. Then finding out who the stand user is and how good of a cover he has. His reasoning for fighting them was avenging the man he worshipped, which was Dio. He promised to be able to read some notes Dio wrote down in a notebook about obtaining heaven, but before he could, JoJo killed Dio and then found the book and read it before burning it. So Poochie's main goal is to get these memories back and avenge Dio. With all his backstory out of the way, we get to the climax of this first arc. Jolyne got the disc and is racing to get it to the Speedwagon Foundation, which is another amazing legacy from the series. Weather Report gets hurt fighting Lang Wrangler, and so he stays behind as Jolyne rushes to the courtyard. But before they realize it's a trap, Jolyne gets shot. Hearing that something went wrong, Weather Report decides to make it rain frogs from the sky, because Florida has had reports of that happening before. However, this is specifically poison dart frogs, which the narrator specifically says are only found in the Amazon rainforest. So a great JoJo moment where it's like, that almost makes sense? Nah, screw it, it's JoJo. Anyways, it was pretty sick. It seemed like Jolyne gets killed, and then we found that she made a net of the living frogs to protect her, which I don't know how well it would work, but it's freaking epic. Whitesnake finds the disc, and then she steals it and tosses up in the air for Savage Garden, the carrier pigeon, who flies it back to the Speedwagon Foundation. With other people coming to see the scene, Poochie is too afraid of revealing his identity, so he escapes without finishing off Jolyne. It was really epic seeing Jolyne ready to sacrifice everything. She was bleeding out of her mouth and on the ground in a helpless situation, completely at the mercy of Whitesnake, and she says, "I won." It was such a powerful moment. That's all I have to say about this first part of Stone Ocean. When the next section of part 6 comes out, it's pretty likely that, I'm gonna make a video. So subscribe for that and like this video if you made it this far. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Ja meow!